Just unplug from it.
And then it stops. It's magical.
It is. Because and we know why, don't we? Hi, Ria.
Hi.
That's
I'm
because.
good, thank you. How are you guys?
Yeah,
All's
good.
well.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. Looking forward to this evening's chat about the solstice.
Yes, indeed.
It's about time tonight. It's time.
I think the solstice one is next week. I'm not sure, but we have a brand new show starting tonight as well at 8:30.
Oh, cool!
And we have a guy called Neptune on, and he's starting a new show. So we're going to see how that unfolds. So yeah, his first show's this evening at 8:30 till 9:30 every week. So it'll be when E-Shell does her show on a Thursday, it'll be 3 on a night. Then it'll be yourself, E-Shell, and then Neptune. But then obviously when it's not E-Shell's night, like it is tonight, then it'll just be yourself and Neptune for now.
Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, tonight's talk is about time.
Okay.
As we as we are. Because I did a thing. Did I do one about? Oh, that was Yule, wasn't it? That was about Yule, which is different to solstice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do one on solstice, depending where I am, because I'll be in Maidstone, and I don't know what time that's going to be.
No, I think Jackie wants to do her topic on the winter solstice for scribing journeys next week.
Oh, cool.
So Jackie's definitely doing it because her show is going to be on the 18th of December, so it's literally sort of 3 days before the start of the winter solstice.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
So I knew I'd seen it somewhere. That's maybe where you've got it from, Ria. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
No, I saw it on Angie's post. She said it said solstice. I just thought solstice. I didn't read the bit after when it's just a word that stuck out to me.
Yes. Yeah, solstice is
so
cool.
It's 6 o'clock. My package hasn't arrived as we speak. Do you want me to fire up the recording?
Yeah, that'd be great, because I do forget to send it on. So yeah, if you could do that, Andy, that'd be great.
So EIM, which is my backwards. And what we're going to call it just time then.
Time. Yeah. Time.
Very simple.
Indeed.
Right. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Are you sitting comfortably?
I'm sitting comfortably.
Right. I will do the countdown, press start, and then it's over to you. So
Cool.
3, 2, 1. See you on the other side.
That was the wrong time. That was the wrong time.
That was a magical start there, right there.
Oh my God.
Have a drink of water. Breathe.
I did. That was the problem.
Are you feeling better now?
Oh, blimey.
That's probably one of the best starts to a show that we've ever had, that one.
Well, you know, I do like to make an entrance. Bloody hell.
Right. Come on, I'll mute myself when it's... Are you feeling all right now?
Yeah, I'm good. Oh, bloody hell.
And it's over to you.
No, that was definitely the wrong time to take a sip of water. When you breathe and take a sip of water at the same time, it doesn't work. And nor does time. So, what's really interesting when it comes to time is it moves. And I don't mean the hands on a clock. I mean, it shortens or excuse me, or it lengthens. So we're going to talk about that, because if time is a fixed thing, yeah, then you wouldn't be able to perceive it in any other way but the way we are told, yeah. So a second is 1 second, a minute is 1 minute, an hour is 1 hour, a day is 1 day. But as we know, yeah, depending on your excuse me. So I got to laugh because I'm coughing my guts out just before the show. That was really funny. So dependent on where you are in your life, what you're doing on any particular time of the day, your state of mind, any of those things, your perception, your perspective, changes time, changes how we experience the thought form, because it is only a thought form of time, yeah. So I remember when I was, oh blimey, I was on my own with my mum, but my brother wasn't there, thankfully. So I don't know how old I was, but I had my bicycle with me, my little bicycle. And because I couldn't ride a push bike. I couldn't ride a bike properly until I was about 6. I always had the stabilizers on it, even though that felt really unsafe. So I was pushing my push bike with the stabilizers on and walking up the road with my mum. And she used to tell this story to everybody, yeah. And she said, you looked at me, she said, and you said, I'm getting older as time's moving on. I'm, you know, time is something like time is getting faster as I'm getting older, something like that. I said. My mum looked at me, because my mum, my dad were not in any way, shape, or form philosophers of any description. My mum didn't know what to say to that. The way she tells the story, she just stared at me and thought, "Oh my God, you know, where does this come from?" But I think what we get, what I glimpsed and verbalized at that very young age was the idea that the longer you spend incarnated on this planet, time changes. Yeah, I think my voice has finally come back properly, thankfully, and I'm not going to drink any more water until the end. So what makes me laugh about time, yeah, and time, there's many words: timekeeping, being timely, I can't think of any now. It's not time for that either. But there's so many ideas and around this thought form of time, yeah. But when we look, being a witch, when we look to nature, yeah, for our clues, if you like, to to what's happening in the world. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a tree with a watch on. Never seen that. No, never seen that. And this weird phenomena now, I mean, we don't wear watches. I mean, I can't remember the last time I wore a watch. I can't remember. It was a very long time ago. But you used to say to someone, because we had to go into town today before we had friends around this afternoon. And I was very conscious of the time, so I didn't have long because I had to cook my stollen. And Ian asked a guy just who was filling his car up with stuff. He said, "Oh, have you got the time, please?" And normally, so this is a little change in behaviours in people. they would look at their watch, wouldn't they? Now it's like, oh, got to get my phone out, because we don't take our phones out most of the time. We don't take our phones out, so I had no idea what the time was because we had to get back for a certain time. Yeah, and it was just really interesting how that has changed. If you want to know the time, you know, do people now look at a watch, or do they look at their phone? So there's a how does that affect your experience of time? The reason I stopped wearing a watch was because I didn't want to be constrained by time all the time. Yeah, I mean, obviously, sometimes you need to be some place at a certain time, but you know, for the rest of your life, you know, why do we feel the need to be constrained by time? Is it a comfort thing? Is it an obeying thing? Because when you think about, when you think about work, that's constrained by time. So if we choose not to be constrained by time, that's going to affect, you know, if you go out to a job, not necessarily if you're you know, working for yourself. So it was really fascinating today, because I'd already made up my mind to do a talk on time, and then we have that funny little thing in the B&Q car park of asking someone what the time was, and they don't look at their watch, they look at their phone, and there's all the rigmarole of having to get it out of your pocket, or it's like, it's really funny how that experience has changed people's experience of time. I don't know if that makes sense. So I suppose going back to nature, so nature doesn't have a clock. She doesn't operate by fixed seconds and minutes and hours and days. She's just in a, going back to last week's, in the constant spiral of reducing and increasing. It's always, it never stops. Yeah, a bit like time, although you can stop time if you've got a stopwatch. So that's an interesting little thing there. You can also affect time when you're being creative. So time might slow down or speed up when you are being creative, when you're channeling your divine source energy into being creative. Time does weird things, yeah. Talking about TK Maxx, we're going to TK Maxx, and I hear this from, it's not just our experience, I hear people saying it when they're coming out of the shop. They come out of the shop and we hear things like, God, is that the time? I was in there for hours. It's like, yeah, it's really interesting how doing something like walking around a shop just sucks your time. I find that fascinating. You might not, I do. So going back to nature again, getting back on track. So when you look at nature and how she does things that spiral out and back in and out and back in, there's no, it's not like on May the 1st, all the blossom goes bang, okay, we're here. And then on May the 2nd, it's, no, the blossom's gone. It doesn't work like that. Whereas we've been conditioned to, at 10 o'clock, I have my break, and at 10:15, I stop my break. At 6 o'clock, I have my dinner, and at 6:30, I finish my dinner. We've been trained to believe that time is even the saying, your time is precious. It's not your time that's precious, it's your whole life. Your whole being is precious, not just your time. So nature. So when you look at how she does things, and even that is changing, we are seeing how nature does things is changing. For example, we have quite a large lemon balm plant in our garden, and it usually dies back down this time of year, and then it comes back up in the spring. We never see any new growth this time of year, so we've got new growth. There's new growth on this plant. We're seeing new growth, and when I'm talking new growth, I'm not talking the buds that are on the trees right now. I'm talking about full new growth. All around us, we're seeing this. And for a lot of the plants in our garden, they're not reducing, they're increasing, which makes me wonder what is going on. Obviously, that's to do with the sun and the energy that we're in at the moment, especially with Pluto and Aquarius again. But that's a cycle of time, if you like, as a cyclical thing. And I heard something yesterday which was really interesting, about the idea of everything going in cycles. So time is one of those things, that goes in a cycle. It goes round and round and round and round and round and round. But apart from in sci-fi, I have never heard anyone talking about time being a spiral. They talk about it being a cycle, so around and round and round, but they don't talk about it being a spiral. But essentially, that's what we experience when, if you're being creative, or if you're in TK Maxx for 3 hours and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? If you're sitting in nature, time can pass. It can pass quite slowly, actually. We found today actually passed quite slowly, even though it's been quite a busy day. I was, at like 2:30, I thought it was 4 o'clock. So my perception of time had been altered. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's a bit like the double slit experiment. So when you observe it, it changes the result of the experiment to when you are looking away from it. So I think time is like that. I think time is not a static thing. Time is fluidic. So is it even, I haven't even looked at the etymology of the word time. So I don't even know if you break the word down, what that even if there is any, there might not even be any etymology. It might just be a random word. Who knows? So if our experience of time is affected by what it is we are doing at any given time, then it's not rigid, it's not fixed. Even though they would really, really like you to believe it is, it's not. So, I'll ask you this question. When was the last time? It's in there everywhere, isn't it? That word. When was the last time that you had a what you might call a distorted experience of time? Yeah. Like for me today, the day went. It was actually quite a. It was a very relaxed day, actually, even though I was freaking out about my Stollen because they hadn't risen in time. And I was freaking out because I was going to have these tiny little things that hadn't risen at all. But in fact, they had. And when I put them in the oven, they went like that. So, yeah, that was a lesson for me, not to freak out about Stollen. But it was actually quite a relaxed day. So if you're more relaxed, does time move slower? Another example. So if you're at work, yeah, and you've got nothing to do, what happens to time? It crawls past, and it's almost like you can feel each second slowing down, and the less work you've got, the more that second hand slows down until it's like almost static, and you keep looking at that clock. So you are affecting time by your attention to it. So it's that saying, isn't it? Your energy flows where your attention goes. So if you're constantly looking at the clock, yeah, you're affecting the passage and your experience of time. Yeah. Which is, this isn't new stuff at all. I just really wanted to talk about this today because we are getting closer to the solstice. So what is happening to time as we move closer to the solstice? Well, when you look at, so time has already been turned upside down because here in the UK we do British summertime, and then it goes back to normal times. It's already gone back to normal time, which is funny, isn't it? How that hour just throws everyone out. It just, for instance, our dog would be thinking that it's what they'll be that, so they go back, don't they? So he would be thinking it was later than it actually was. So he'd be looking for food or, looking to go for a walk when it wasn't time yet. So I do find it quite fascinating. Yeah, this whole, because who did that? Who did it? Who did it? I want to know who did it. Who came up with this idea of time? Because, I mean, I don't think our pagan ancestors had watches. They certainly didn't have smartphones. So how would they mark the passage of time? Is there even an alternative for that word? There we go. I might have to research that for next week. So yeah, who did it? Who blooming did it? And what was the old way of marking, like, days, if you like, and where, from what I can gather, people used to use things in nature. Nature was the lord of time, lady of time, or both. So they would go by, well, on in 3 full moons time, for example. Yeah. Or they would say when the first buds appear on that tree over there, for example. They would use nature as a way of marking that passage, yeah, which wouldn't be fixed. It was not, 9 p.m. on Friday the 13th of, December. It's Friday the 13th tomorrow. I've just realised that. Wow. That's very cool. It was done, by looking at nature. So you would, nature would be your time lord, your time lady, if you like. So this idea of time being fixed, yeah, on a face with hands, why is it called a face and why is it called hands? I'll leave that one open. Has that been a way to disconnect us from, looking out at nature and using nature as our timepiece, for a better word? So I find that quite interesting, actually. Just in terms of the pagan in me, the witch in me is fascinated on how these things have been shaped. They've been almost carved out for us, if you like, and we've gone, oh yeah, that looks really good. I'll go and do that. I'll get myself a watch, and back in the day, it'd be a pocket watch, and it'd be very ornate, and it was a little ritual. Take a pocket watch out, and you'd look at it, and this whole rigmarole around, and prestige, I'd imagine, probably, with having a pocket watch and a waistcoat to put the pocket watch in. It'd be a particular type of waistcoat, obviously, because it'd have to have a particular things on it where you could place your pocket watch. So I don't know. I'm rambling now, but I do find it fascinating that it's another way to disconnect us from our true nature, which is nature, and from using nature as our timepiece, for a better word. So the other thing about time, when it comes to I don't know what they would call that in sciencey terms, like the theory of things like wormhole travel, which is a hole, if you like, in what sci-fi would call the fabric of space and time. So there's a hole, there's a tunnel, if you like, that goes from one point of time to another in a shorter time than it would take you to go around. So even that, there's a so hang on, let me show you with a piece of paper. So you want to go from there to there. That's quite a long distance. So for anyone on the radio show, I've got a piece of paper, and one corner to the other corner, it's quite a long distance. But if you fold that, and they actually call it folding space and time, you fold it and create a hole between those two corners of paper. Hey presto, you've just time traveled. How easy is that to do? I don't know. No idea. But allegedly there are little holes in space and time everywhere. Maybe that's where all the socks go. All those odd socks have to have a counterpart somewhere. Maybe they fall through the wormholes. I don't know. And because I love sci-fi, I think sci-fi is a really great way to explore this idea of what time is. My favourite description of time comes from Doctor Who, and it's a big ball of timey-wimey stuff. So every point in space and time, there is past, present, or future. It's just all mashed together in an untidy ball of string. So what I like about that is that's really easy to then do your wormhole travel. So could you, in theory, travel back to a point in your past through this big ball of timey-wimey stuff, which is just all squished together? That'd be really easy, wouldn't it? rather than perceiving it as a line that goes, you know, back 40 years or whatever, it's a lot easier to think of it in terms of, well, just moving to a different string in the ball, if you like. And I have actually done this, and I've done meditations that entertain this idea of when you change something. So, for example, what do they call that? An ancestral karmic work. Yeah. So if you're trying to clear karmic stuff that you've carried with you, that you've chosen to carry with you, yeah, that you can actually not only clear your own negative karmic stuff, because the good stuff we want to keep, yeah, it's the shitty stuff that we don't want. So the idea of this big ball of timey-wimey stuff can actually be really useful when it comes to clearing an ancestral line of repeated negative karmic patterns. So it makes sense, doesn't it, that if it's a big ball of timey-wimey stuff, then you'd only need to do one thing for it to then travel through this big ball of timey-wimey stuff. Makes sense to me that that's how that works. That's how that clearing the ancestral negative karmic stuff works. I don't know if that makes sense. Makes sense in my head. So because things work on, like, you drop a pebble in the water and it's the ripples that create the change, not the pebble dropping in the water, it makes so much sense to me that all that big ball of timey-wimey stuff that is all happening now, if that makes sense, yeah, think of it as many, many layers, yeah, of time. I haven't found another word for it yet. That as those ripples go out, it's going to affect those other layers. It can't not be. It can't not affect those other layers. Yeah. From my perspective, anyway. So that's how, you know, seeing, you know, time as a big ball of timey-wimey stuff can actually be quite helpful. How else can it be helpful? It actually helps you to get into this idea of there is only now. It does help with that. It helps with this synchro-mystic journey as well. Because if every possibility there ever was, is, or will be, if it's all squished together, then you're going to be able to access that a lot easier than perceiving it, like I said earlier, as a line, yeah. Or so in things like transurfing, they talk about jumping timelines. Well, that actually sounds really hard. Sounds like hard work, yeah. But if everything is a big ball of timey-wimey stuff, you don't need to jump anywhere. You can just step. You just step. Yeah. If you've got two things, so I'm crossing my fingers here for anyone listening. So if you're on one timeline, yeah, you just step. It's like walking up a step. Maybe that's what this ascension journey is all about, because it is a it is an ascension. So you're going up steps of learning, you could say. You're going up steps of frequency. You're going up steps of knowing. You're going up steps of self-realization. So if you've got, can I do that? I can do that. I've crossed 3 fingers there. Ouch. So, and you got another one, my thumb. So you got 4 different timelines there. 5 if I try and put my little finger over there as well, which isn't going to work. So if they're all bundled together, yeah, and you're here, so you're here at the knuckle, yeah, but you want to go to the little finger, then it's a lot easier to step up those timelines than it is to try and, well, even to find the right timeline. How do you even find that if they're all running, you know, like, I don't know. I don't even know how people would perceive that. How do you perceive different timelines? Do you perceive them as parallel? Do you perceive them as branching off in all directions like a tree branches? That's kind of how we are told it works. But if it's just a big ball of, I haven't got a ball of string here, unfortunately, but if it's a big ball of timey-wimey stuff, then you would just be stepping, wouldn't you? You would just step. And if that's not the right timeline, you step onto the next one. Maybe step onto the next one. And that is the synchromistic journey, because what you get is we see them as signposts. You could see it as an illuminated path. We've also done that kind of work where we ask for the path to be illuminated, so there is no doubt what the path is. Yeah, there's no confusing it with another path. So that's essentially the synchromistic journey. So you're literally stepping from one timeline to the next until you find your path and you begin to walk it, run it. But you're experiencing that. So in that big ball of timey-wimey stuff, is there an illuminated thread you can actually find the end of, and then you gradually work your way through the big ball of timey-wimey stuff on your illuminated path? Is that how it works? Yeah. A really interesting goddess to work with when it comes to finding, walking, even kind of being able to open your brain to, you know, this idea of walking this illuminated path is Ariane Rod, because what she does as part of her support, guidance, whatever you want to call that, and don't forget, these are always aspects of yourself, they're not outside of you, is that she's a weaver. So she weaves paths through space and time, because essentially she's Arachnia. And when she weaves them from her tower, so she sees everything. And she is a psychopomp, so she can see the underworld as well. So she can see all possibilities, if you like. Yeah. So if you befriend her, she can guide you on that path without question. Not forgetting, it's an aspect of yourself that you're connecting to. It's not a being that is, it's the same with all deities, angels, whatever. Yeah. They're always aspects of yourself. That's why you never prostrate yourself to any of these things. You are equal to them. Yeah, because it is you. Yeah. Excuse me. So yeah, working with Ariane was really interesting, because she will, you can get a perspective of the path you're on, but you can also see the other possible paths. So it's a bit like reconnecting with your higher self briefly. That's the part of you that's bigger and sees everything. So it's a bit like connecting with your higher self in order to get that perspective, so that you can shift your perception. Remember, there is a difference, and gain some kind of knowledge about where where your illuminated path is, for example. Yeah. And I don't know, there's something quite magical about getting that kind of perspective, especially if you're in the valley, you know, and everything looks very overwhelming. Because when you're in a valley and you look up, it just looks like I'm never going to be able to climb up there. I'm never going to be able to see what is over the other side of that hill, for example. And I get that. I do, because we have experiences on this planet in this physical body that are very overwhelming. We're going through one right now. And it is, if you can't get a perspective on it, it literally eats you alive. That's kind of what it feels like, yeah, when you're in that space. So if you can get a perspective to change your perception, yeah. I say Ariane Rod is amazing to work with. I mean, you might have another deity that you prefer to work with, but for me, she's been quite amazing to work with when it comes to this, you know, knowing that you're on your true path without question. Because when you're on your true path, and this comes back to time again, yeah, timing, all of a sudden, timing is, you see the dots between one event and the next and the next and the next, and you realize that you yourself, the part of you that's bigger and sees everything, has timed these things. But you have to have time, you have to slow down to be able to hear those messages or see those signposts when they come up. And it is the Celestine Prophecy. You know, if there's anyone out there that hasn't watched that yet, go and watch it, because it is amazing. There is another excuse me, there is another series as well called Helia, which is on YouTube. The only place you can watch it is on YouTube. And that tells you their synchro mystic story, and how, and that started with an email. I think there's two series of it. But it's really interesting how the unfolding of their journey works, and that is, it is time, because it's that synchromistic journey, and it's very much like the Celestine Prophecy, centered around this idea of slowing down, taking time to slow down, yeah, because in slowing down, it's almost like you create a bubble of time in front of you for things to drop in, yeah. And you could say that is pure sci-fi. I'm trying to think. I think it's in Star Trek. I think it's in Star Trek Voyager, when they are fighting the Borg and a species. It has a number. Can't remember the number. 82 something or something like that. And when they time travel from this is dimensional travel from one dimension to another, they create a bubble. I think I've got this right. They create a bubble in front of them, which they then travel through from one dimension to another. So that's time traveling between dimensions, which is also explored in Fringe, which is really interesting because that's to do with frequency. So it's time travel, but it's not on the linear path of your own timeline. It's from, if you like, one of the strands of the big ball of timey-wimey stuff. They call it a parallel universe, So yes, they call it a parallel universe, not a different dimension. Sorry, I got that wrong. So are parallel universes the same as, you know, timelines on a big ball of timey-wimey stuff? I don't know. Has anyone here ever time traveled, by the way? Has anyone here ever met a time traveler? The reason I ask is that we've had some very strange experiences with timeline shifting. That was back in 2021. And since then, we have experienced, it can be really subtle sometimes, the change. So you go one place one day, you go back there the next day, and something has radically changed about that place, which couldn't have happened overnight. And we have experienced that. So one example, so we went on a camping holiday, and we were doing this walk, and there was a fence. This was in 2021. There was a fence along this path. Yeah, it was a very muddy path. It had been raining a lot, and this was the day when people were still jumping out of the way because you're a human being. Yeah. So we experienced a lot of that walking, because we were just walking down the path. Yeah, we weren't doing any of that stuff, and people were jumping out of the way. So we know there was a fence. I think we've even got video footage of this fence going alongside of this path. Yeah. So when we went back, it was not even a month later. It was literally about 3 weeks later. The fence was not there. There was not even a sign, because I was looking for a sign of a fence post having been there. Yeah, there was nothing there. No sign that a fence had even been there. It was really, really freaky. The only conclusion I could come to, because we had other experiences on the first camping trip that indicated that we'd jumped a timeline. I don't know how we did it, but we did do it, because we got a confirmation of that later on. But it was really, and there were other things that happened on those 2 camping trips that were very, very, it was funny, because by the end of it, myself and him just look at each other and go, timeline jump. We knew exactly what had happened. We jumped a timeline where the things that had happened on that first camping trip didn't happen on the second one, because they weren't there, even though it was literally, I don't even think it was, I think it was about 3 weeks later. So there was, you know, how do you get rid of a fence down a public path without any traces? How do you do that? I don't know. It was just really, it was really weird. And like I say, there are other things as well that didn't match up, that it was very clear that we'd jumped a timeline. So if you've ever had any experiences like that, yeah, I will want to know about them in a minute, because it's fascinating, this idea of time. And really, all you ever have is now. Because if you are remembering something from your past, you're time traveling. You are literally putting yourself, pardon me, in the past. You're time traveling. Same thing if you are projecting, you know, what something might be in the future. What are you doing? You're time traveling. You're literally putting yourself in the future. Yeah. And that's really interesting what I just did there. Did you see that little program working? So for any of you listening, so I've got my 2 index fingers together. When I was talking about the past, I was just automatically pointing to the left. And when I'm talking about the future, I'm programmed to point to the right. When time is not linear, it's mashed up stuff. Some people call that 0 point. So I have heard people talk about, as we get closer to the trueness, if you like, of who we truly are, what we truly are, we enter, it's like the void space. So basically we enter the void space where every single possibility of everything resides. That's the quantum field, which is a 0 point. That's very powerful, yeah, which is why they use 0 point modules in Stargate. That's what fuels the Stargate, the 0 point module, because it's potential energy, which is phenomenal. So if we are in this void space, in the now, just being, yeah, that's the top of Ariane Rod's tower, actually. That is the infinite being that you are. You are the void space, technically. Yeah. I've rambled on. I'm actually going to open it out for if anyone wants to ask me anything. Not that I've got all the answers, but I'll have a bloody good stab at it. But I just find it fascinating that this thing that people call time, and time is fixed and time is rigid and you can't change time. But who even thought of that as a thing? Who even came up with that idea? We must have seconds and minutes, hours and days, months and years, and, you know, I don't know. Nature doesn't work like that. She doesn't. And I just find that fascinating. Yeah. So I'm going to stop waffling. So if anyone wants to add their 2p's worth in, if you ever experienced a timeline jump, I'd love to know about it, because I love sharing these stories with people.
Good evening, Angie.
Hello.
Yeah. My turn now.
Yeah. Cough it up. Might be a pocket watch.
Oh, there are so many things that we could talk about, and we could be here all night.
I know.
I've noticed over my lifetime that there are things that I've sort of not noticed, and then I've sort of looked at something and thought, has that been there all that time? Pardon the pun.
Yeah.
And then I think to myself, why have I not seen this before? It's been right there. Might be a plaque on a wall. It might be a spot in paintwork on somebody's side of the house. It could be an item hanging from something. It could be literally anything. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it has happened several times throughout my lifetime where I've looked at something and I thought, why haven't I noticed that before? It's been right there. Why didn't I notice that yesterday or the day before? Why am I only noticing it today? Has it only just appeared? Well, that can't be. It can't just appear today for me to notice it. It must have been there before. And if it was there before, why have I not noticed it before?
Because it wasn't your time to notice it.
Well, this is the thing. So it kind of, when you were talking about your fence there, that kind of reminded me of that. Where how is it possible that that these things, that if I've noticed it today, it obviously was there yesterday and the day before, and so on and so on. So yeah, that's happened to me several times. I've put a little meme thing created a few weeks back because of a show that I did with the Truth Prophet on Sunday, and it's my little sort of representation of everything, whether it's your life, whether it's the life of an ant, whether it's the life of the earth, whether it's the life of the universe, can all be represented in this little image that I created very, very roughly and very, very quickly, but I called it the Wave of Life. And I don't know can you see it on the station group?
Yeah.
So you've got the present, which is the held card, which is your mind at present in that point. And obviously you're aware, you're aware of the card trick that's being represented there. So the flow will carry on going into the future towards the end or the death of whatever that process might be. And that can be the day, that can be inanimate, it can be biological, it can be absolutely anything. It can be your life, it can be a thought. It can be the birth of a thought, and it moves forward into the future towards its death, and then it becomes in the past. And there can be millions and trillions of these little things, these little cards, waves of life, happening all the time on a minute scale and on a gigantic galactic scale as well.
Absolutely.
So I just thought I'd chuck that one in there.
It's all spirals within spirals, isn't it? It's going back to spirals again. Because in sci-fi they talk about things like time dilation and oh god, I'm trying to think what they call that.
Well, there was a one show that I particularly liked in Stargate, where they explored this aspect in the storyline, that in the actual command center of the Stargate complex, there was a time bubble that was passing much more slower than the outside up on the Earth's crust type of thing, outside.
Yeah.
So time that may have been an hour in the command center was like 3 days up on the surface.
Yes. They explore that in Farscape as well.
They do, yes. And I just find it a fascinating. There must be. It's like I liken it to my thought that I once had of, if we drilled a hole directly from here straight down vertically, and we came out the other side, and then we jumped through it, ignoring the fact that there's molten rock in there.
Yeah.
Supposedly, right? So at some point we must be halfway between the gravitational pull of one end to the other end. So we must be ending up being suspended in the middle, because at one point we'll be falling down, and then at another point we'll be actually having to climb out.
That's mad.
Now, obviously, there's going to be a little bit of inertia there, the speed of which you're dropping down, but then the gravitational pull is you're dropping down the hole, and then at the other end of the hole is the gravitational pull that will pull you through the other end. Fascinating little thought project there, right there.
Do you know what's interesting? Torchwood kind of did something similar to that. What was it called? Oh my god, I can't remember what it was. Like a mini series. It was over about 6 episodes, I think, and literally time, because I don't know if you know Torchwood. So Jack Harkness is a fixed point.
Was it a spin-off from Doctor Who or something?
Yeah. So Captain Jack Harkness is an anomaly. He's a time anomaly. He's like a fixed point. He cannot die. And there's some, I don't know, the usual thing. Naughty people get some of his blood and they do some stuff, and basically the whole world is then immortal. So time stops because he is a time anomaly. And he is a fixed point of time. This then affects the whole world, where no one's dying anymore. It's really weird, and that's all to do with. But
that reminds me of Q in Star Trek.
Oh yes, definitely. But what you've essentially got, you've got
being, isn't it?
You've got that thing that you said. You've got a hole that runs right through from one side of the Earth to the other.
Yeah.
And it creates this strange time anomaly that is fueled by his blood. It's really weird that you said that, with a hole going through the Earth.
Yeah, it's a great thought thing to play around with inside your head, and it's sort of like, well, yeah, what if you stop, then at some point, halfway down, you will be between the gravitational pull of the one side of the hole with the other, but then you would still have to climb out of the hole at the other end.
Mm.
And then you would, in the middle, you just be suspended, and there would be a period of distance between this around the centre of the hole, or in the middle of the tunnel,
Yeah.
Where it would be, you'd be weightless.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in with any thoughts. We can ponder anything with time, because these are relevant.
And when you're walking that synchromistic path, it is very strange how time does actually become irrelevant. You really have to let go of that concept of time. And
yeah, you do. Yeah, and I'm like yourself. I don't wear a watch. I stopped wearing a watch years and years and years ago.
Yeah,
very long time now. And I now, when I go out, I never take my phone with me at all. So I have no timepiece on me to indicate as to what the current specific time is. So if I want to find out when the bus is coming, I have to ask a member of the public to say, excuse me, have you got the time?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's really funny.
But that to me, it's also a way of you're un-isolating yourself from interaction with other human beings, rather than having my own timepiece and being sort of like, I've got my own timepiece, I don't have to talk to anybody. It's like, no, you have to interact with other beings. Excuse me, sorry to trouble you, but I don't suppose you know what time it is, do you?
Yeah.
And you can then spark a conversation that would never have occurred at all, ever, if you had have taken a timepiece out with you, whether it's a mobile phone or a wristwatch or whatever.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it? You then start creating those very unique. I mean, every moment is unique in itself, but yeah,
but you can fill it with things that would never have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
that's
point
where the
in
magic
time
is as well. That's that magical.
Everything is magic.
Yes, everything is magic.
And you create those very, I don't know, that's the every point in time, I still don't have another word for it yet, is when, especially if you're doing something like asking someone what the time is, you don't know then what that ripple will then, how it then, because that split second where that person has stopped what they're doing and is looking at their phone, that's going to have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So time excuse me, time is affected by you asking someone what the time was.
Yeah, and it's a very observational thing as well. Whilst I was listening to you, one of the things that was cropping up in my mind that you was conjuring up for me was observing a athletic race. So when you're at the racetrack and you've got 7 or 8, 10 athletes all lined up, they do it, and then you fire a pistol and they all shoot off.
Yep.
Not all of them can run all at the same time. Some are faster than others.
Yep.
Now, for the individual racers, the individual athletes who are running along, the one that's at the front is in a different time space than the one that's at the back. Because they're not as fast as the one at the front, and then there's all those in between as well. But as the observer at the edge of the racetrack watching the athletes run round, you're observing them all at the same time.
And don't forget the curve as the track goes round, again, time shifts, doesn't it? It takes longer to go around the outside and a shorter amount.
Which is why when they set off, they're staggered, aren't they? There's always a few feet behind if you're to doing long distance.
But that doesn't it doesn't seem to work because I don't know, it goes a bit weird, doesn't it, at some points?
It does.
Goes a bit strange.
And I've also, when it comes to time travel, I've often, for many years now, believed that we are traveling into the future faster with every passing year as technology improves. And the best way I can describe that is 500 years ago, if I wanted to travel from the north of England to the south of England, it would have taken me days to walk that path.
Yeah.
So to say from York to London. So it would have taken me, let's say, 5 days to walk it. And then somebody said, why don't we ride a horse? So then it became, 3 days to get from York to London. So we're then travelling faster into the future because we're using the horse. And then, of course, then came along the motorbike, and then along came the motor car and industrialisation. And we start travelling into the future at a faster rate, purely dependent upon the level of technology that we currently have. And at this point now, we've reached a point, like a 0 point, like you mentioned earlier, where we're at that point now where we can't go any faster into the future than we currently can without a quantum leap, if you will.
Yeah, quantum leap.
We're at a pinnacle.
If you could match your running speed to, this is sort of thing, I don't know, other people have probably pondered this question. If you could match your running speed to the speed of a train, so you're inside the train running, and the train is going at the same speed but in the opposite direction, time would stand still, would it not? Because you wouldn't be going forwards or backwards. I thought I was going to say something slightly different there, but So you're on a train at the front. Wherever on the train, I don't think it would matter where you were on the train.
Okay. And it's going at 300 miles an hour.
Yeah, if you could run at 300 miles an hour, then you would technically be standing still. You wouldn't be moving forward or backwards.
Yeah. Or would you? Because you're in an enclosed, it's like I've taught this in relation to a ball. When you throw, if you're in a carriage that's travelling, let's say, at 300 miles an hour, and you're at one end of the carriage and I'm at the other end of the carriage, and I throw a ball to you, that ball will travel the same distance from me to you inside the carriage, but from the observer outside of the carriage, that ball would have travelled a lot farther because of the train moving as well.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Time is not, it really is not fixed. It is, I think something else they explored in Star Trek was this idea, and they do it in the time machine as well. So the machine that you're in when you are time traveling doesn't move. It's the stuff that around you that's surrounding you that moves. So essentially what you have, so that's what you were talking about earlier, you're basically in a capsule. You are in a fixed time in space, but what is moving is the linear time, if you like, is moving backwards and forwards on a scale, if you like. So you're sitting there and time is moving. I don't know if that makes sense. So if you get a ruler, I haven't got a ruler to hand, damn it. And you suspend a bead just above it, and you move the ruler backwards and forwards. So time is moving backwards and forwards, but you're staying still. So you are stationary, and you are not moving in space and time. Does that make sense?
It does. It does indeed.
I think that's where I got the train idea from. If you could match your speed with the train, then somehow you wouldn't move. But I guess you'd hit one end of the train, wouldn't you, at some point? That's not good.
These are all fascinating sort of thought exercises to ponder upon. And some people would just turn around and say, "Oh, well, what's the point?" But then my argument to that would be, well, that's where the fun is playing around with it and seeing what you can come up with.
Absolutely.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Which is why I came to the conclusion a few years back that when we sleep, we connect to alternate realities.
Yeah, we're definitely doing stuff in our sleep, that's for sure.
Yeah. And sometimes some people can't remember because that's just the way that they are. And then some folk can remember. And then some folk can manipulate the circumstances while they're in there.
Yeah.
And whilst they're connected to these different realities and pull things through.
Yeah.
That's another thing as well that I find very, very interesting, that you can pull information or experiences or observations from that dream in an alternate reality into this one.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool. That's kind of time.
I've done that myself many times.
Sort of time traveling, isn't it? It is time traveling.
It again, it depends, I suppose, on your perspective and your observational standpoint. But yeah, you're in an alternate reality, and you're pulling something out of that reality, which only exists in your mind, into this reality when you wake up from it, because you've remembered it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Fascinating, isn't it? I love it. Brilliant.
Well, we've been joined with Jackie as well. I don't know if Jackie's got any observations to make on time or any contribution that you could chuck in here.
I think I'd have to listen back to the episode. I came in late. I saw you guys were still there, so I thought I'd just tune in.
Cool.
Well, thank you for coming on.
That's cool. Did we want to stop the recording and then maybe people would? Yeah,
no, we can do that. Okay. Have you got any final words on time before I do?
Take your time. That's what I would say. Take your time. Yep. That's my advice for the day. Take your time.
Right, well,